Desire.
Yes.
Also known as Tom.
Yes.
The Daisy Desire.
Also known as the drag queen gardener.
The drag queen gardener.
Who'd have thought?
I like a drag queen gardener.
Don't we all?
We need some gardening.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but you've got to battle the M42 regularly.
My God, did anyone else get stuck on that? It was horrendous. I had to go cross country, and I tell you something, trying to drive for like an hour through the countryside, there was many old boys that were like, what on earth is that? I was like, I'm not your ex-wife, darling, you carry on, you'll be fine.
So Daisy Desire is a horticulturalist, activist, TV presenter and drag artist, adding couture to your manure. Not my line, I assure you. It's a fucking great line, I wish it was. He believes that gardening should be made less intimidating and accessible to everyone, and has made it his mission to promote the mental well-being benefits of horticulture, encouraging people to get outside, get grown, get your hands dirty. That's the thing, dirt under your nails, not those nails. Dirt under your nails is absolutely refreshing and replenishing. Welcome, Daisy.
Well, thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Oh my God. Yes.
Tell me, I always have these same three questions, and I'm going to ask them today because I'm really intrigued as to what you're going to say. Tell me what your childhood tasted like, smelt like, and sounded like.
Oh, I know what it sounded like. My mom going, Thomas! And that's about it. Yeah, it's like, get here. Or it was like, you wait till we get home. I think it smelt like spearmint. Because I remember my granddad used to have these spearmints. He always had them in his pocket as well. And I remember when I was, I think, about 10 years old, and I was like, I'm going to try and be an adult and do all my Christmas shopping. And I went to like the local tiny supermarket and went around with my little car. And I got him some spearmints for Christmas. And tasted like, oh, what? I don't know.
Close your eyes.
Okay.
You're 7.
Mm-hmm.
You've just come home from school.
Mm-hmm.
You can have had anything you wanted for your tea.
Yeah.
You've already told Mum or Dad what it was.
Mm-hmm.
You've finished watching the telly. John Craving's news round's just finished.
Apple crumble and custard.
There you go.
There you are.
Apple crumble and custard.
Yes.
Oh, what was it about apple crumble? Was it the way that the crumble yields and melts with the fat and leaves the sugar? Where's Sarah Bailey's here? Oh, she's gone, thank God. And leaves the sugar.
Yeah.
The sugar on your tongue, the gritty, sweet fattiness, or was it the sharp cut of apple through that?
Oh, it's more crumble than apple, of course. Yeah, and with the custard as well. Oh, yeah. Oh, am I on?
Should be.
Oh. Oh, I can bellow. Can you hear me now?
That's it.
Oh God, that was like hello. Yes. So, yes, apple crumble.
And tell me about the custard, the enveloping love.
Oh,
of custard.
I'd love to say I was bougie growing up, but no, and I had like some gorgeous Madagascar custard. No, it was very much, you know, that kind of custard powder in a tin. Birds.
We'll talk about brand. What colour is the bird's pack? There we go. One of the most visually, just instantly recognisable. Forget your Pringles, mustachio. It's all about the bird's custard for me. Totally agree.
Oh my God, and like it was one of them that like if you left it an hour, it would set into like some solid. No, it actually didn't taste of anything, but like to me, I loved it as a kid.
Brilliant. So we've got the sound of Thomas.
Yeah.
The smell of spearmint, which is actually probably the smell of your granddad.
Yeah, yeah.
And his pockets.
Yeah.
And the taste of apple crumble and custard.
Oh, I'm quite cute, aren't I? I am a country girl, you know.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a village called Bidford-on-Avon. It's just outside of Stratford-upon-Avon. Yeah, yeah.
And what was your childhood like? What did it? Because I know that part of the world. Quite sleepy.
Yeah.
Wanting to be the Cotswolds, but not quite the Cotswolds.
Yeah.
How was your childhood? What did you do for fun?
Oh God, what did I do? I used to, so basically, I only realistically probably got into gardening 3 years ago, but I did used to help my my auntie and my uncle garden, but I used to spend a lot, my parents worked all the time, and so I used to basically stay with my granddad all the time, and we were so close, and...
This is Spearmint Grandad.
Yeah. And oh my God, we used to watch loads of murder mysteries together. And I thought about this about am I okay? That's all right.
That's good.
I thought about this because I thought, oh my God, maybe this is where like I really got into gardening. And do you remember, we used to watch all these murder mysteries, but do you remember there was this a show, it was called Rosemary and Thyme. Yeah. Oh my God, my people, like, yes! And like literally, it was Felicity Kendall and Pam Ferris, and they would like, am I getting those ones right? No, drag queens.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and I remember I was obsessed with it because there was these two ladies that would solve murders, but at the same time they'd also renovate these gorgeous gardens. And it was like my favourite show growing up, and I completely forgot all about that until about a couple of weeks ago, and I saw something on YouTube, and I was like, oh my God, Rosemary and Thyme! I was so obsessed with that because when people ask me like, how did you get into gardening? Well, I only got into gardening like 3 years ago, and had a complete career change and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think that is why I was going to get into gardening because I think. I loved that as a kid. I was always so intrigued by like these murder mystery gardeners. So to be fair, I look like I'm solving crimes today, don't I?
a daytime crime show.
Yeah.
And your granddad.
Yeah.
Made you a gardener.
Yes. Oh, we always in the evenings. I still have the box sets actually. We used to binge watch because he brought all these box sets of Only Fools and Horses, and I loved it. Those TV shows you can't beat. You honestly can't beat. I'll have those box sets forever. Like, honestly, I think they're amazing.
It's brilliant. So I've got this image of this wholesome, amazing childhood. Did you flow through it easily, like water downhill, or were there bits that were the rapids?
No, if I'm honest, I think my childhood was quite... I think I was actually quite lonely as a kid because my parents were always working, so that's why I was always at my granddad's. But it was with my granddad that he had such a zest for life, and he was one of those people. He was a bit like a Dow boy, but he used to, he was in the forces at one point, and then he owned a few different companies, but basically he'd travelled the world. And it's really funny, he used to tell me about these stories about him travelling and going to different places. And it turned out some of them were complete bull, his family and his brother told me recently, and I was like, oh my God, really? And do you know what the funniest part is? When I turned, I think 19, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm just gonna get a one-way ticket to India and not come back for 3 months. And then I got this zest for travelling, and I kept travelling. And I genuinely think it's from all these stories of my granddad on these adventurous, ridiculous travels of swimming with great whites in some ridiculous foreign sea that really wanted me to go out and see the world.
That's amazing. And is granddad still alive?
No, he passed away. And I don't think I've ever told anyone this. So basically, he passed away just before I was 13, and he promised me that on my 13th birthday, he'd take me to New York, because it was always my dream. So I've promised myself now that when I go, sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm going to tell you this. But when I turn 30, in 5 years, I'm going to go to New York for my birthday, and I want to take a picture of my granddad in a frame. And so although he didn't manage to take me, that I could finally take him. Yeah.
They hold our hands. They hold our hands for a short time, but they hold our hands forever.
I usually talk about gardening, but
we're going to get
oh.
So it's funny, just across tiny bit further, 30 miles further west than that, I grew up, my grandparents lived in a place called Barnacle, just south of Coventry, And some of my fondest memories were with my granddad in the greenhouse. Those little moments where I'm doing nothing, I'm repotting fuchsias. I didn't know what a fucking fuchsia was, but he taught me that. Sorry, swearing. He taught me those things, and sometimes it's like being in the dark room with my dad. It's the pointless, meaningless things rather than the big trips and the big events that you hold on to. That they give texture and nap to your life in a way that other things don't.
Well, that's how I kind of feel about gardening, and that's how I kind of feel like everyone can benefit so much more if they just got a bit outdoors, whether it's for 20 minutes, I don't know, 2 hours or whatever, or even a week, a day, whatever. I feel like we can benefit from that so much. So how I got into gardening, I had to tone this down for garden as well because it was a bit un-PC. But basically, I'd never put a gardening glove on before, and I used to live in Birmingham. And I used to pass on the train, I used to catch the train on the way to work to go to the city centre. And on the way in, I used to pass these allotments. And I was really just curious I was like, oh my God, what is this? I was like, this is so cute. It reminds me of my childhood because I was living in a city and stuff like that. And I was just really, really intrigued because I'd never properly got stuck into gardening or really knew anything about it. And I was in a long-term relationship. And one day, he came back and he literally just dumped me. And I was like, oh, okay. So that night, I went out and got so drunk, as you do, because it's like, oh my God, my life has come tumbling down. Like, I don't know what to do, or what am I going to do? And I woke up the next morning, horrendous hangover, and I just literally sat on the end of my bed, and I was like, do you know when you look out the window like it's in a Down music video, and it's like, oh. It's like the world is carrying on, but mine is still. And literally, I just thought to myself, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Why not go get an allotment? I literally, that's how, I am like a trained horticulturalist now. And obviously I do talks about gardening and Gardener's World and stuff. But I find it hilarious that I literally, when people say oh, how'd you get into gardening? And people do think oh, I'd love to say it was, my grandparents who taught me. No, I got dumped, and I literally thought, oh God, what am I going to do now? I'll go get an allotment. And literally, and that's where it began. And I took on this plot. The funniest part is that I was being shown around the allotment sites with the secretary, right? And, sorry, I'm taking over your job here. So basically, he was showing me all the plots, and because he knew that I hadn't been a gardener before, and he showed me loads of different ones that had been tamed and stuff. Because this was pre-pandemic. This was about 3 years ago. And luckily, the allotment site, my local one. Sorry if you can hear the coat. It's a bit. Basically, there were plots available, but I refused to take a nice plot on. Me being me, I was like, I need a challenge. I literally said to him I need a challenge. So I got him to give me the worst plot that hadn't been taken on for 10 years. It was so bad, all the other allotment owners were dumping their crap on my allotment. It was brambles taller than me, and you can see the state of the size I am. And I'd never put a gardening glove on. So I literally went to B&Q and was like, oh, can I get some, got some gardening gloves and stuff, and just spent the whole summer ripping stuff out and obviously breakups, so crying you and then the anger moments of hitting brambles with a fork, you dump me, you and do you know what? I killed everything. In the first year, I killed everything but one marrow, and I hate marrows. But you know what? In that first year, I fell in love with gardening, because for me, it was oh my God, I was losing so much track of time. I remember I'd get there at 8 in the morning, and then I'd think, oh, it's lunchtime, and it was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd think, oh my God, usually I'd be binge watching something on Netflix, but I'd lost myself into it. I completely threw myself into something that I'd never tried before. And ultimately, I was loving it, because although I did kill everything in that first year, other than that skanky marrow, I learned so much about how not to kill stuff. I learned about, I made every mistake in the first round, And that's what I always say to people, like, if you kill a plant, get over it, it's life. You just find a way of not trying to kill over it the next time. That's the whole point of gardening. You're constantly learning. And also, I just found it so beneficial. And the reason why I started talking about and really pushing the kind of thing of why gardening is good for your mental health is because I go to events now, and obviously people are looking at me. I mean, I wonder why. And I just thought, well, hang on a minute. I want to say something that's important. And about a year ago, my stepdad basically just suddenly died. And automatically I had to become the man of the house. And then my uncle died a month later. It was such a horrendous time. And I'd started to hit a bit of depression. So I used to go to my allotment. And it gave me that space of kind of just having that moment for myself, and also, nurturing something back into the world. And it's going to sound so... I'm not a horrendously spiritual person, but I genuinely sat back and looked and just took a moment and watched this one... Well, there are many bees, but watched this bee fly in and land on these marigolds that I'd planted, that had grown from seed. And I literally was there like, oh my God. In this time where I generally feel like I'm surrounded by death and darkness and have this almost like cloud looming over me, I'm literally putting life back into the world, and this is what I'm carrying on. And then I started really thinking about how gardening has really benefited me, and how much it's been such a kind of stable piece in my own sort of like mental well-being. And I just thought, that, do you know what? Like, I have a presence in this gardening world now and a platform to speak about, and that's what I want to bring to the table, because I feel like, I mean, right now we don't need any excuse to need gardening. I mean, come on, what's going on in the world? But ultimately, I think if we can get more people gardening, I'm not saying it's going to solve anyone's problems, but it will give you, like I said, either 20 minutes or 2 hours, even in a week, just to have a moment. I mean, for God's sake, one thing I love about gardening is that, oh God, I'm really getting on my soapbox now, aren't I? But one thing I really love is that you can't multitask. And I think we're in a world where we pick up our phones and we go to sleep and and we wake up and we're constantly like this, and we're constantly multitasking. We've constantly got so much going on, either on our phones or in our heads. But when you're gardening, you can't rake and sow seeds at the same time. You can't pick up your phone either. You have to concentrate on that one task in hand. And how rare is it these days that we do something like that?
And it's very analogue. To link us back to the first talk this morning, or the first conversation this morning, this whole idea of it being in serial, in sequence, where you can't plant it out till you've seeded it.
Yeah.
You can't seed it until you've dealt with last year's seeds. Everything has to happen at a certain time. And that order, I mean, we call it Kairos time, that order of the way that nature happens adds such a pattern to life. One that I keep missing, if I'm honest. I keep starting too late in my garden. I'm a bit of a shit gardener.
That's okay.
But
there's no such thing as a shit gardener.
Great drag queen, right? So I don't know which way I'm going to go. No, I'm going to go to gardening. But I absolutely love this. I love this pattern that this is irrelevant to this.
Yeah.
The phone and the social media distractions, they're not going to help with that, but they do help with learning.
Yeah.
And did you garner knowledge? Did you learn through the internet, or did you talk to someone?
Definitely. I mean, all of the above. I mean, before it was like the drag queen gardener, I started this Instagram, and I called it Going Up the Lottie, because I kind of wanted to show that, like, at the time, I think I was 22, didn't know anything about gardening, and I just kind of wanted to almost show my own progress to myself. And there's a great community, and that's the good thing about gardening. It can be both really beneficial solitary, whether you're on your own and you need some time on your own. It's just that it's great like that. But it's also such a good community when it comes to gardening, whether it is online or your next door neighbour or your allotment owner. I mean, I know people that live that have balconies and stuff, and one of them's growing like tomatoes, and the other one's growing chilies, and they both swap, because there's way too many tomatoes coming from one plant, And there's a great community like that, and I think you always learn. You're always learning without even realising it, and isn't that the best way to learn? And it's just kind of, there's a great community. And also, do you know what? I'm not a huge reader, but I do read gardening books, and if I don't know something, or if I find a plant that's really interesting, I want to know where it's come from, or what variety it is. I mean, when I was studying to be a horticulturalist, I used to go around the botanical gardens in Birmingham, and I used to just see plants and be like, what is this plant? Why does it look like that? Why is it checkerboarded? And it was a snake's head fritillary. And it was just kind of, I was like in awe of just the patterns on the petals. But also, I think we're very quick to kind of, how do I put this? I love a raised bed, but ultimately, when I got my allotment, it was pure clay. And I wanted the also challenge of changing that allotment in terms of working on the soil and knowing how I can make that better in the best form. So a lot of manure and a lot of digging. And now, when I see the worms, like when I plant stuff in it, and there's like 5 worms just in one trowel, I'm like, oh my God, like, I did this. This is amazing. Like, yes. Yes. Yes.
Good. So I can see. I mean, the curiosity and the play and the kind of ability to experiment. I can see that. And I can see how gardening makes you feel. I can see that. How does the drag queen side make you feel? And is there curiosity, play, and experimentation there that brings out another part of you?
Definitely. I mean, do you know what's really weird is that I find that Tom has become so much more. When I say it's not in a bad way, but more reserved, because I feel like this is a lot, and I love what I'm doing. I really, really do, because I did not intend to put drag into gardening. I literally just there was nothing that was open when we were in the pandemic, and I literally thought, why didn't I just use my allotment and the garden centre as like the backdrop for my drag, and just have a laugh and have Vogue-style photo shoots in the greenhouse. But that's what I mean. Because I had this little gardening community on my Instagram, I was like, I'm just going to post this because I just think it's funny and it's going to make people smile. And also, I kind of saw the gardening world as something that's a bit stiff and a bit kind of like, and I just thought, well, I'm a gardener. Wouldn't it be funny if I posted me in drag? Like, oh my God, didn't life change? So what I'm trying to get to is how the drag queen gardener sort of stuff happened is because there was some sort of like social media presence happening, and I was like, oh, okay. And then basically the RHS had invited me, they got in touch with me and they said, oh, can you come to it was called Hampton Court Palace a flower show press day. So it was a press day with press and stuff. At that point, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just there like, oh, okay, do you want me to turn up in drag? Like, what? Like, you want a drag queen at a flower show? That's ridiculous. And they were there like, well, actually, it's up to you if you want to come in drag. And I spoke to a few people who are in that sort of industry, because I was just, some gardener. Like, as in, why was I being invited to the RHS? And I remember I was on the taxi ride going there, and I was like in full drag, and I thought, what on earth am I doing? I'm so scared. I'm so scared. What am I walking into? Why am I doing this? A drag queen in the middle of the day going to a flower show. This is the most ridiculous thing on earth. And I was like, oh God. I was like, if anything, I'll just have a laugh of it. And do you know what? Like, my childhood, I didn't really have like a role model in terms of being like queer or, and I remember, if I'm really honest, I've never talked about this in terms of openly, but when I came out, in PE, I stood up for myself. I've always stood up for myself. And, but I was so scared that I used to go get changed in the toilets instead of the locker room because I was scared that someone would say something or someone would it just wouldn't go right. Do you know what I mean? Because that's in a vulnerable place and I didn't feel comfortable. I think obviously I am 25 and things have got better, but I feel like I was not always accepting of myself as well, And I was in full drag. And I remember, so going back, sorry, because I was walking through the gates and there was these line of school kids and they were doing a garden inside the flower show. And they were all there like, oh my God. And I literally thought to myself, oh my God. I thought, I wish I'd seen someone like that, you know what I mean? When I was like that age. So it was genuinely at that moment, because I hadn't been doing drag that long either. I did not look as good as this. But, and I literally was there, and I was there like, you know, that's the moment I just put on a show, and I was like, hi, yeah, I'm a drag queen gardener, how are you? I'm Daisy, like, yeah, oh my God, you're into gardening, that's amazing. I was like, and then I strutted through the gates as you go, and I could see some celebrities over there, some press, and this photographer just started taking my photo. And I think normally the celebrities there, you know, like kind of like, oh yeah, a lovely flower show. And I was thinking, well, I'm not used to this. This is my Hollywood moment, so I'm posing for the gods, like giving it like a cat. Giving it my best Marilyn. Oh my God, next thing you know, this one photographer turned into like 30, and I was just there like, oh yes, I'm a gardener. Yeah, because they all kept saying, you're a gardener, and I was like, yes. I was like, why else am I here? And then it just hit the newspapers, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And then like the RHS was like, oh my God, what is going on? This is so exciting. And I think it's because I didn't care. At that point, I was there like, I stopped doing it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I wasn't going in for. Just I was scared I was going to walk in and be some novelty drag queen at a flower show. But once the reaction I got, I was like, hang on a minute, I'm not no novelty, darling. I'm like training as a horticulturalist. I'm a gardener who happens to be a drag queen, and you don't have to take this seriously. But you know that I'm serious when I'm talking about gardening, because that's what I love. That's what I do on a daily basis. So I was like, why can't I become the next face in gardening, in and out of drag? I was like, why should that be a problem? And I know at that level, like I then went to Chelsea Flower Show press day, and I'm strutting in, and I'm literally there like, oh God, what the hell am I doing again? Like, oh God. And now I have a lot more confidence, but these were like the first couple of flower shows I was going to. And I had on my bag, all I put was, I didn't ask your opinion. And I strutted through Main Avenue like that. And I was like tossing my hair, and literally nobody knew what to wear to look. And all I could think was, do you know what, darling, this is my flower show. You're just all invited.
This is fascinating.
So that's how the drag queen gardener stuff happened.
I've seen it. Genuinely, it's a celebration of gorgeousness and love. But there's a couple of things that you said that I find it really, really fascinating. Number one, if Daisy hadn't turned up that day, if Tom had turned up that day, what would be different? Number two.
I mean, I wouldn't be sat here.
I know. Number two, but I mean, in terms of the way how does Daisy give the permission when Tom doesn't? And number two, you talk about Daisy and Tom like they're two different people. Do you feel like you are two people, or do you feel like there are two halves of the same person?
So, I would say Daisy is a persona, but it's like with the volume whacked up to max. I asked my mom this, because sometimes I bring my mom with me to events, and bless her. My mom's a lorry driver, by the way. I feel like I have to say this to people, like, my mom drives lorries. I know, like, literally. But you know what, she's like the only woman in the company, and like, all the men are in the office, and she's there like, with our big lorry, like, and she's like this high. Like, honestly, it's mad, I know. 2 peas in a pod. What on earth? But, yeah, so, oh, sorry, what was your question?
I have 2 questions.
Oh, Tom and Daisy.
Yeah, does Daisy give you the permission to show up bigger? Could that not be Tom? And do you see it as 2 people as part of you, or do you see yourself as two different characters, or one person with 2 different aspects?
It's weird because, how do I put this? The way I treat Daisy, because I think I've come from more of an acting background, so I treat it as when I'm on stage, or like say like as in when you're an actor on stage, you're in character, that's Daisy. And the audience is Tom. But when I asked my mum this, I said, how is Daisy different to me? Because I think I am the same. I kind of might tweak my movements, but I naturally do this anyway, because I try and do like, I have this like pose and smile and stuff. And like my friends will be like, oh, there you guys, Daisy's coming out again. And I literally, they're like, and I try and do it as Tom, it doesn't have the same effect. But when I asked my mum, I said like, and she said, do you know what it is? It's like, you're exactly the same person, just so glamorous. Just like, it's just so like, you know how to handle things so well, like, it just becomes naturally. And I think like, when I first started doing this and going to the flower shows and stuff, I just didn't want to upset anyone. But seeing the way, like, seeing what I am and how this can have an effect, it's like, I don't care. I really don't care. And things change for me because ultimately, I usually go on press days to these events, you know, and obviously it's nothing but a warm welcome. And things really changed for me, and it happened this year. And it was Members' Day, and I turned up again in drag because I thought, oh my God, well, why should it always be, you know, why should it only just be the glamorous side? I want to, you know, actually meet other, you know, normal gardeners. And I was surrounded by thousands of people, and I never felt so much like a freak. It was horrendous. I genuinely, and do you know what the worst thing is? It's no one would say anything. Like, no, it was always like a look or a little, or you could see. And I remember there was like a wall of like 40 people sat down, and only one person even smiled at me. And I remember, this is like, I thought I was like, I'm the dog's bollocks in drag. And I remember thinking, I thought, oh my God, this is the gardening world I don't like. This is why people don't want to get into gardening, because it's almost like, or they're intimidated to get into gardening. And it was at that point that I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. I was there like, I'm here. Whether I'm Tom or Daisy, like, you don't treat people like that. And you don't look down on someone just because they're different. So I will damn well be turning up on my heels to every event I get invited to. Because whether you like me or not, I'm still here and talking about gardening. And do you know what the common interest is? We probably both like gardening.
Yeah, that's the clue.
Literally.
Before I open it up, which I'm going to do, what about Gramps? What would Gramps think? What did your granddad think?
Do you know what? It's weird. So I would think, so I don't have any grandparents now because they're all sadly passed away, but I asked my mom this. I asked, like, I was like, what do you think, like, Granddad Bernie and Barbara would think of me in drag? And, like, you know, doing this whole kind of, like, going on telly and talking about gardening and, you know, doing talks and stuff like that. And, like, she was like, do you know what? I think they'd absolutely love it. Because, like I said, I'm the first person to say, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, a drag queen is usually lip-syncing in a club, or, you know, doing something like that, or, you know, at Pride with Kylie Minogue and a cocktail. I love having a cup of tea and coming to events in the day, do you know? And I love that I can do this, but I think they'd love it, genuinely, and I think they'd be so proud. Like, genuinely, I'm not an egotistical person, but genuinely, I am a drag queen, went on a show like Gardener's World, and basically did the whole thing talking about gardening. And then I also turned around and said, you know, I mean, and I hope looking at this, it's not necessarily try and get everyone to be a drag queen. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to say, like, be who you want to be, who cares? Like, I don't have time. If people have opinions of you, it's none of your business. Just live your own best life, you know? Live your best horticultural life, you know? I do. And I just think that, like, yeah, I just like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm finally making a mark. And you know, like I said, I didn't go into this trying to kind of almost have some political stance. And that's not my main goal. But if I can, one, get people into gardening, but also give people some sort of permission to kind of just be who they want to be. I just think that's a job well done on my part, you know, a bit of pat on the back. And what I like as well, and what I really do like, is like, I'm not going to lie, like, there is more of an older generation are into gardening, and more of a younger generation are into drag. And what I love is that I can cross them over and try and get both of them into drag and gardening. And I'm there like, and you know, and I'm there like, oh, this is quite, and also have a laugh in the process, you know.
I love it. I love the idea of ridging my spuds in stilettos, I really do. That's wonderful.
Adding sass to your grass.
Totally. So we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. We've got 10 minutes. We'll go there first, because you were quickest, and then we'll come here.
I've got an allotment, and I got it in the middle of the pandemic. And they took me round, the old guy, and I picked the site, we plot on the shed, because sheds are important. Yes. Very. So he said, it needs painting. But it was this height, we'll get the committee to trim it. So it goes off to B&M, St Paul. Cooper and I painted it. Yeah, it's fine. Painted it TARDIS blue. He goes, was thinking more green or brown. I went, really? Well, I'm going to have some little raised beds and I'm going to paint them rainbow colours. Oh, you're one of them. And I went, what?
Wonderful. Question here?
Does Daisy actually...
No. So this is the thing. So like, the closest Daisy will see to gardening is like, I don't know, a photo shoot on a lawnmower. Do you know what? I actually no. I mean, like, my main job is a gardener, and I renovate people's gardens, and I work on a kind of stately home garden as well. So I don't wear these, obviously. Though I've glued these on quite tight today, so I feel you know, it's a bit of raking, you know. But no, absolutely not. The hair and the boots and everything cost way too much to get dirty. Saying that, the amount of times I've had to hold a shovel or sit on a lawnmower and stuff, I had to sit on a tractor like a couple of months ago. I was like, God, does Monty Don have to do this? And I actually, like, I had to have this, like, kind of photo shoot type thing. It was with the press. And they put me in my shed, and it was in the heat of summer, and they'd put loads of smoke bombs in there. So a drag queen in full drag, smoke bombs, heating shed. And all I had to do was, like, burst out, because I'd walked in as Tom, and they wanted me to be like, oh, I'm Daisy. Like, drag queen gardening. And oh my God, the smoke bomb was burning my eyes. And I literally sat in there like, what on earth is my life? Like, and literally, I'm there like, can you just go? And he's like, wait for the smoke to fill up. And literally, I'm there like, oh God, this is gonna go. And I had to burst out like, but no gardening at all. But as Tom, yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions? You have one there.
What are your top 3 tips for starting out?
If you're new into gardening, I think, okay, tools and stuff like that, get second-hand. I think, you know, people can blow a budget when they're gardening. I mean, don't take me to the garden centre, trust me. I think, grow what you like, whether it's flowers or produce. You know, like if you like radishes, grow radishes. They're actually quite an easy crop to grow as well. Because ultimately, like my first year, the only thing I could survive was a marrow, and I didn't like that. But any flowers, do you know what? Any flowers you like, whether it's a dahlia or anything from seed or anything like that, grow what you like or anything you find interesting. I'm not going to say this is you, but in the sense of like, I was speaking to someone, and you could start a flower farm, but basically, I did a podcast with someone a couple of weeks ago, and I said to them, I was like, how did you get into gardening? And one of them turned around and said, well, actually, I saw a dahlia that I really liked and thought it was really interesting, so I went and bought it and just grew it in a tuber in a pot in my back garden. And now she runs a flower farm. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, grow what you like, what you find interesting, and then go from there, because what you will find is that one thing leads on to many other things, you want to know more. So that's 2. The other thing is, like, just don't be intimidated. Like I said, like, if something dies, or if you kill it, figure out why you did that, you know, and never be afraid to kind of just try anything. You know what I mean? It's gardening. I mean, ultimately, you just if that dies, you just pull it out and put something else in its place, if you like, you know?
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please, last one.
So I think you bring the humanness to drag and then the glamour to garden.
Oh, thank you.
And I really think, like, this, what an upgrade to Alan Titchmarsh.
It's wonderful.
There's a new face in gardening and she's painted.
I love it, and I just think that curiosity, play, glamour, and you're right, gardeners tend to be older, but look, the punks are now bank managers, right? The Scar boys and the Scar girls are now heralds of industry, right? As we age, we don't leave the youth of us behind, but we shouldn't. And I think as your market grows, I call it a market, as the people who look at you and go, that's brilliant, grows, that reflects the fact that we're all aging. And at 54, I can look at something and go, yeah, I can see why that really matters to the youth, but actually, I am still the youth.
Absolutely.
I think it's super important to hold on to that. So long may you continue to wear those preposterous boots, which aren't good for your feet, but they look amazing. They look amazing in your Gardener's World performances. And I can't thank you enough for just being honest and open and you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.